Steve Harvey asked what seemed like a harmless Family Feud question, but when Samantha Jenkins gave her answer, Steve literally dropped his cards and walked away from the podium. The studio went dead silent. The cameras kept rolling as a secret that had been destroying a marriage for 7 months was exposed on national television. What happened next made Steve Harvey break down in tears, led to a live phone call that no one saw coming, and sparked a movement that would save thousands of marriages across America. This is the moment that changed Family Feud forever. It was April 17th, 2024, and the Family Feud studio was alive with its typical energy. The Jenkins family from Ohio was competing against the Thompson family from North Carolina, and the game had been entertaining from the start. Both families had delivered some funny answers that had Steve doing his signature double takes and exaggerated reactions. Samantha Jenkins, a 42-year-old nurse from Columbus, had been performing well for her team, showing quick thinking and good intuition about the survey answers. She seemed confident, warm, and completely at ease in front of the cameras. The Jenkins family had just stolen the board from the Thompsons and were working on a new question. They'd already found 3 of the top answers, and the pressure was building. Samantha stepped up to the podium, adjusting her purple cardigan and smiling at Steve as he approached with his cards. The studio lights were bright, the audience was engaged, and everything seemed to be proceeding exactly as expected for a Wednesday afternoon taping. Steve looked at his question card and smiled, clearly anticipating some amusing responses. "We surveyed 100 people," Steve announced with his characteristic enthusiasm. "Top 8 answers on the board. Name something a spouse might lie about to avoid disappointing their partner." The audience murmured knowingly, already thinking of answers like weight, spending money, or maybe forgetting an anniversary. Steve was preparing his comedic timing, ready for whatever entertaining response might come his way. Samantha stood there for what felt like an eternity. She looked at the board showing the 3 answers already revealed. Then at Steve, then seemed to look past him, at something only she could see. Her family members behind her started offering encouraging whispers, assuming she was just overthinking the answer. But something profound was happening inside Samantha's mind, something that went far deeper than game strategy. When Samantha finally spoke, her voice carried a weight that immediately shifted the entire atmosphere of the studio. "Having a job. My husband has been pretending to go to work every day for 7 months." The words landed in the studio like a thunderclap. Steve's playful expression dissolved into genuine shock. The audience went completely silent. Even the camera operators seemed to pause, uncertain if they'd heard correctly. Steve Harvey, a man who'd built his career on knowing exactly what to say in any moment, stood there speechless. He looked at Samantha, then at his card, then back at Samantha. The silence stretched on, heavy with the weight of what had just been revealed. Finally, Steve found his voice, though it was gentler than anyone had ever heard it on the show. "Samantha," he said softly, stepping closer to the podium, "did you just say your husband has been pretending to have a job for 7 months?" Samantha nodded. And for the first time since stepping up to the podium, her composed exterior began to crack. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she remained standing tall. He lost his job at the manufacturing plant last September. He was so ashamed, Mr. Harvey. He's been leaving the house every morning at 6:30 in his work clothes, taking his lunchbox, kissing me goodbye like nothing changed. But he hasn't been going to work. He's been sitting in the public library, applying for jobs on their computers. Sometimes just sitting in his truck in parking lots, waiting until it's time to come home. The studio remained dead silent, except for the soft sound of several audience members crying. Steve put down his cards completely, abandoning any pretense of continuing the game normally. "How did you find out?" he asked gently, his voice carrying a mixture of concern and compassion that viewers had rarely heard from the typically jovial host. Samantha's voice broke as she continued. "I work night shifts at the hospital, so I'm usually asleep when he leaves. But last month, I got sick and had to come home early from my shift. I decided to surprise him at work with lunch, to thank him for taking care of me while I was sick. When I got to the plant, They told me he hadn't worked there since September. They thought I knew. They assumed we were handling it together." Her shoulders shook with suppressed sobs. Steve moved around the podium entirely, standing directly beside Samantha, offering his presence as support. The production team made no move to intervene, recognizing that something extraordinary was happening. "What happened when you confronted him?" Steve asked quietly. "I didn't," Samantha admitted, wiping tears from her cheeks. "Not at first. I drove around for hours, trying to understand. Then, I started following him. I watched him go to the library. I saw him sitting in his truck, eating the lunch I'd packed for him, alone in an empty parking lot. He looked so defeated, Mr. Harvey. This man who's been my rock for 18 years, who's always been so strong and proud, looked completely broken. The audience was transfixed, many openly weeping now. Samantha's family members on stage had moved closer to her, her sister placing a supportive hand on her back. Steve's own eyes were glistening with unshed tears. "So he still doesn't know that you know?" Steve asked carefully. Samantha shook her head. "I've known for 3 weeks. I've been pretending that I don't know he's pretending. We're both acting out this charade. Every day. He leaves for his non-existent job, and I wave goodbye like I believe him. He comes home and tells me about his day, making up stories about coworkers and meetings, and I nod and ask questions like, I don't know he spent the day desperately searching for work or just driving around to kill time." Steve turned to face the cameras directly, something he rarely did during regular gameplay. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, his voice heavy with emotion, "we're going to take a pause here, because what's happening right now is more important than any game. Sometimes life gives us moments that demand our full attention and compassion. This is one of those moments." The audience remained respectfully silent as Steve turned back to Samantha. "Why haven't you told him you know?" he asked, his tone free of any judgment, just genuine curiosity and concern. Samantha took a shaky breath before answering. "Because I'm afraid it will break him completely. He's already so ashamed. He thinks he's protecting me from his failure, but I can see what it's doing to him. He's lost weight. He doesn't sleep. I hear him crying in the bathroom at night when he thinks I'm asleep. If I tell him I know, if I take away even this illusion of dignity he's trying to maintain, I'm afraid of what it might do to him." Steve nodded slowly, processing the depth of pain this couple was experiencing. "Samantha," he said, his voice stronger now, filled with purpose. "What you're describing isn't just about a job. It's about pride, shame, love, and the lies we tell to protect the people we care about. Do you understand how many families are going through exactly this right now?" Samantha shook her head, overwhelmed by the moment. Steve continued, his voice carrying to every corner of the studio. "We're in times where good, hardworking people are losing jobs through no fault of their own. And the shame that comes with that, especially for someone who's been the provider, it can be crushing. Your husband isn't alone in this, and neither are you." Steve looked at the production team and made a decision that would be talked about for years. "We're going to do something different today," he announced. "Samantha, is your husband watching right now?" Samantha's eyes widened in panic. "He might be. He sometimes watches in the break room at—" She caught herself, realizing she was about to continue the lie even here. "I mean, he might be watching somewhere." Steve took both of Samantha's hands in his, a gesture of support and solidarity. "Then, let's talk to him. Let's talk to both of you, and to every couple out there going through this." He turned to face the main camera. "Sir, if you're watching this, if you're Samantha's husband, I want you to know something. Your wife knows. She's known for weeks. And she loves you so much that she's been protecting your pride the same way you've been trying to protect her from worry." Samantha was sobbing now, but Steve continued, his voice firm but compassionate. "Brother, losing a job doesn't make you less of a man. It doesn't make you a failure. It makes you human in an economy that's tough on all of us. But lying about it
Carrying that weight alone, that's what's killing you. And it's killing your wife. To watch you suffer in silence.
The studio audience began to applaud, not in celebration, but in support, in recognition of the truth being spoken. Steve raised his hand for quiet, not finished with what he needed to say. "Samantha, tell me about the man you married. Not the one who lost his job, but the man himself." Samantha's face transformed, a small smile breaking through her tears. "Michael is the best man I know. He's worked since he was 16. He put our 2 kids through college working double shifts. He's never missed a birthday, an anniversary, or a school play. When my mother was dying of cancer, he took time off work to drive her to every chemotherapy appointment because he said that's what family does. He's not defined by a job, Mr. Harvey. He's defined by his heart. And his heart is good." Steve turned back to the camera. "Michael, if you're watching, your wife just told America who you really are. Not an unemployed man hiding in shame, but a good man going through a hard time. And brother, I've been there. I've lived in my car. I've been homeless. I've been so broke I couldn't afford to pay attention. But I got through it, because people saw me for more than my circumstances." Steve made another unprecedented decision. "Samantha, we're going to help, not just with money or prizes, but with real support. We have connections to employers, job training programs, and career counselors. But more importantly, we're going to help you both learn how to be honest with each other again. Because that's what's really broken here. The communication, the trust that you can share your struggles without judgment." The other family, the Thompsons, had been watching all of this unfold. Without prompting, the Thompson family patriarch stepped forward. "Excuse me, Mr. Harvey," he said. "I own a construction company in North Carolina. If Michael is willing to relocate, or even if he just needs temporary work, I've got a job for him. A good job, with benefits. Any man who inspires this kind of loyalty from his wife is someone I want on my team." The studio erupted in applause. Samantha looked stunned, unable to process the sudden turn of events. But more offers began coming from the audience. A woman stood up, identifying herself as a human resources director, offering to review Michael's resume and provide interview coaching. A man shared that his company was hiring remote workers and would guarantee an interview. Within minutes, what had started as a moment of painful revelation had transformed into a job fair of sorts. Steve had to call for order, but his face showed deep emotion at the outpouring of support. "This is what I'm talking about," he said. "This is what happens when we stop hiding our struggles and let people help. Samantha, your courage in sharing this truth hasn't just helped your family. You've helped every family watching who's going through the same thing." But Samantha had something more to say. "Mr. Harvey, I didn't come here planning to say any of this. But when you asked that question about what spouses lie about, I just couldn't pretend anymore. I'm so tired of pretending. We're both so tired. And maybe if Michael sees this, if he knows that I know and I still love him, still respect him, still see him as the man I married, maybe we can stop pretending and start healing." Steve nodded, wiping his own eyes now. "That's the key, right there. Healing starts with honesty. It starts with admitting we're struggling, and accepting that struggle doesn't diminish our worth." He turned to address the audience again. "How many of you have been where Michael is? How many of you have lost a job and been too ashamed to tell anyone?" Dozens of hands went up throughout the studio. Steve wasn't surprised. That's what I thought. "And how many of you have been where Samantha is, knowing someone you love is struggling but not knowing how to help without hurting their pride?" Even more hands went up. Steve made yet another executive decision. Both families win today. Maximum prize money for both. Because this isn't about competition anymore. This is about community. This is about supporting each other through the hardest times. The Thompsons and Jenkins families embraced, united now in something bigger than a game show. But the most powerful moment was yet to come. As the taping was wrapping up, with everyone emotionally drained, but somehow uplifted, A production assistant rushed over to Steve with a phone. "Mr. Harvey," she said urgently, "we have someone on the line who says he's Michael, Samantha's husband. He's been watching from his truck." The studio went silent again. Steve took the phone and put it on speaker. "Michael," he said gently, "is that you, brother?" A broken voice came through the speaker. "It's me, Mr. Harvey. I've been watching. I saw everything. I'm in the parking lot of the library. I've been sitting here for 3 hours, afraid to go home, afraid to face another day of pretending." Samantha grabbed the phone, her voice urgent and full of love. "Michael, baby, come home. Please, just come home. We don't have to pretend anymore. I love you. I've always loved you. A job doesn't define you. You define you, and you're everything to me and our children." Michael's voice broke completely. "I'm so sorry, Sam. I'm so sorry I lied. I just didn't want you to see me as a failure. I didn't want the kids to know their dad couldn't provide. I thought I'd find something before you found out. I thought I could fix it." Steve took the phone back gently. "Michael, brother, listen to me. You're not a failure. A failure would have given up. A failure would have stopped trying. You've been going to that library every day, fighting for your family. That's not failure. That's heroism. It's misguided heroism because you should have let your partner help you fight. But it's heroism nonetheless." The studio was completely silent, everyone straining to hear Michael's response. "Mr. Harvey, I don't know how to come back from this. I don't know how to face her knowing she knows I've been lying for 7 months. Steve's response was immediate and firm. "You face her the same way you faced every other challenge in your 18 years together, as a team. You walk in that door, you tell the whole truth, and you rebuild together. And Michael, you've got job offers waiting. People who watched your wife describe you want to hire you. Your story inspired help, not judgment." There was a long pause before Michael spoke again. "Sam, are you still there?" Samantha was crying too hard to speak clearly, but she managed to say yes. "I'm coming home. I'm coming home right now. And I'm done pretending. About everything." The relief in his voice was palpable. The phone call ended, and the studio erupted in applause and tears. Steve stood there for a moment, visibly moved by what had just transpired. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said finally, "what we just witnessed is what happens when shame meets love, when fear meets courage, and when isolation meets community. Samantha and Michael are going to be okay, not because they won a game show, but because they stopped playing games with each other." When the episode aired 5 weeks later, the response was unprecedented. The hashtag number #NoPretending began trending within hours. The clip of Samantha's revelation and the phone call with Michael was viewed over 70 million times in the first week alone. But more importantly, the comment section became a support group of sorts, with thousands of people sharing their own stories of job loss, shame, and the lies told to protect loved ones. The impact was immediate and profound. Career centers across the country reported a surge in attendance, but specifically in couples coming together for help. Employers began sharing the clip in diversity and inclusion training, highlighting the importance of understanding the psychological impact of unemployment. 3 months after the episode aired, Samantha and Michael appeared together on Steve Harvey's daytime talk show. The transformation was remarkable. Michael, who had been hiding in his truck just months earlier, sat confidently beside his wife, ready to share their journey. The first thing that struck viewers was how they held hands throughout the interview, a united front against whatever challenges might come. "Mr. Harvey," Michael began, his voice steady and clear. "Watching my wife defend me on your show while I sat in a parking lot lying to her was the wake-up call I needed. Not just about the job situation, but about what I was doing to our marriage. I thought I was protecting her, but I was actually shutting her out of the most important challenge we'd faced." Samantha added, "And I was doing the same thing, by pretending I didn't know. We were both so focused on protecting each other that we forgot that marriage means facing things together. The 7 months of lies were harder on our relationship than 18 years of regular struggles because we weren't struggling together. Steve asked about the job situation, and Michael's face lit up. I had 14 job offers after the show aired. 14. Some from people who saw the show, some from companies that heard about it. But the best part wasn't just getting a job. It was realizing that my worth wasn't tied to my employment status. I took a position with the Thompson family's construction company, the family we were playing against. They didn't just give me a job, they gave me a chance to rebuild my confidence. The Thompsons had indeed followed through on their spontaneous offer, but they'd done more than just provide employment. They'd become friends with the Jenkins family, checking in regularly and providing support that went beyond professional. It turned out that Tom Thompson had gone through a similar experience years earlier, and he understood the shame and isolation Michael had felt. During the interview, Steve shared statistics that had emerged since the episode aired. Unemployment counselors reported that the clip had become a tool for helping couples communicate about job loss. Several states had started support groups specifically for couples dealing with unemployment, inspired by Samantha and Michael's story. Major corporations had implemented new policies, providing support specifically for employees dealing with job loss, whether their own or their partners. But perhaps the most significant change was in how the couple now lived their lives. "We have a rule now," Samantha explained. "No more pretending. About anything. If something's wrong, we say it. If we're scared, we admit it. If we need help, we ask for it. It's scary being that vulnerable, but it's scarier to go back to living separate lives in the same house." Michael shared a particularly poignant moment. "About a month after I started the new job, I had a breakdown. I was terrified I'd lose this job too, and we'd be back where we started. Instead of hiding it, I told Sam immediately. We worked through it together. That's when I really understood that she wasn't just my wife. She was my partner. In every sense of the word." The couple revealed that they'd started a blog called No More Pretending, where they shared their journey and provided resources for couples dealing with similar challenges. The blog had attracted hundreds of thousands of followers, creating a community of people committed to honesty in their relationships, especially during difficult times. Steve asked about their children, how they had handled learning about the situation. Michael's eyes filled with tears as he answered. "Our kids were incredible. Our daughter, she's 22, she said, 'Dad, I watched you work yourself to the bone to put me through college. Now it's my turn to support you.' Our son, he's 20. He came home from college and said he'd rather have an honest father than a proud one. They weren't disappointed in me for losing my job. They were just sad that I felt I couldn't tell them." The family had started having what they called honesty dinners once a week, where everyone shared something they were struggling with, no matter how small. It had transformed their family dynamic, creating deeper connections and stronger support systems. Their daughter had even written a college thesis on the psychological impact of economic shame on family structures, using her own family's experience as a case study. 6 months after the original episode, Family Feud did something unprecedented. They created a special episode called Families Facing Forward, featuring families who had overcome significant challenges. Samantha and Michael were invited back, this time as mentors for other families going through similar struggles. The episode featured resources, expert advice, and most importantly, stories of hope and resilience. During this special episode, Michael did something that came full circle from his original shame. He stood at the same podium where his wife had revealed his secret and spoke directly to the camera. If you're out there pretending to have a job, pretending everything's fine when it's not, I want you to know something. Your loved ones would rather have your honesty than your pride. They'd rather face the struggle with you than watch you face it alone. The job I lost defined what I did, but the lies I told almost cost me who I was. Don't make that mistake. The special episode also revealed the broader impact of their story. Employment agencies had developed new programs, addressing the psychological aspects of job loss, not just the practical ones. Couples counselors had created specific protocols for dealing with employment-related deception in relationships. Several books had been written about the phenomenon of pretending to be employed, with Samantha and Michael's story featured prominently. 1 year after the original episode, Steve Harvey dedicated a segment of his show to checking in with all the families whose lives had been changed by Family Feud moments. When he got to Samantha and Michael, the updates were overwhelming. Michael had been promoted at his job and was now mentoring other men dealing with job loss and shame. Samantha had become an advocate for supporting unemployment services. Together, they'd spoken at over 50 events, sharing their story and helping others find the courage to stop pretending. But the most powerful moment came when they revealed that Michael's former employer, the manufacturing plant that had laid him off, had reached out. They'd seen the episode and realized they'd failed to provide adequate support for their laid-off workers. They'd implemented a new program providing counseling, job placement assistance, and most importantly, dignity preservation support for employees facing layoffs. They'd named it the Michael Initiative. Steve, rarely speechless, took a moment to compose himself. You two took what could have destroyed your marriage and turned it into something that's helping thousands of marriages. You took shame and transformed it into strength. That's not just recovery. That's redemption. The ripple effects continued to spread. Universities began studying the phenomenon of employment deception in marriages. The Journal of Marriage and Family published a paper on the Jenkins effect, describing how public vulnerability could strengthen rather than weaken relationship bonds. Business schools added case studies about the importance of addressing the psychological impact of layoffs, not just the economic ones. 2 years after the original episode, Samantha and Michael wrote a book together titled Love Without Lies: The Cost of Pretending and the Freedom of Truth. The book tour became more like a series of support groups, with couples sharing their own stories of deception, born from shame, and the healing that came from honesty. The book's dedication read, "To everyone still pretending, may you find the courage to stop." And, "To everyone who loves someone who's pretending, may you find the wisdom to help them." During one book signing, a man approached Michael with tears in his eyes. "I watched your episode from my car," he said. "I'd been pretending to have a job for 4 months. Your story gave me the courage to go home and tell my wife the truth. She didn't leave. She didn't judge. She just asked how she could help. You saved my marriage, maybe my life." These interactions happened regularly, but they never became routine for the couple. Each story of someone finding courage through their experience reinforced the purpose that had emerged from their pain. They'd started a foundation providing emergency financial assistance for families dealing with job loss, but more importantly, providing counseling and support to address the shame and isolation that often accompanied unemployment. 3 years after the episode, Family Feud celebrated its milestone anniversary with a special highlighting the show's most impactful moments. Samantha and Michael's story was featured prominently, but this time they weren't alone. They were joined by dozens of couples who'd been inspired by their story to stop pretending in their own lives. The studio was filled with people who'd found jobs, saved marriages, and rebuilt lives because one couple's moment of honesty had given them permission to be honest too. Steve Harvey, reflecting on the moment, said something that encapsulated the entire phenomenon. When Samantha said her husband had been pretending to have a job, she wasn't just exposing a lie. She was exposing a crisis of shame that millions of Americans face every day. The fear that losing a job means losing your worth. That moment reminded us that television at its best isn't just entertainment. It's connection. It's community. It's the reminder that none of us are alone in our struggles. Michael stood up to address the audience, his voice strong and clear, a far cry from the broken man hiding in his truck 3 years earlier. "Every morning for 7 months, I put on a costume of success and played a role of employed husband. It was exhausting, isolating, and ultimately destructive. But when that costume came off, when the performance ended, I discovered something. The audience didn't boo. They applauded. They offered help. They shared their own struggles. That's when I learned that authenticity, even painful authenticity, connects us in ways that perfection never could." Samantha added her own reflection. We spent so much energy maintaining illusions that we had no energy left for solutions. The moment we stopped pretending, possibilities opened up. Help appeared. Hope returned. Our marriage, which had been dying under the weight of secrets, began to thrive in the light of truth. The special episode featured testimonials from employers who changed their layoff policies, counselors who developed new therapy approaches, and families who'd found freedom from their own pretending. One woman shared how she'd been pretending to attend college while actually working 3 jobs to pay off secret debt. Her husband had been devastated initially, but ultimately admired her sacrifice, and they'd worked together to solve the problem. A man talked about pretending his business was successful while it was actually failing, coming home each night to a family who thought they were financially secure while he knew bankruptcy was imminent. Inspired by Michael's story, he'd finally told the truth. His family rallied around him, his wife's income carried them through, and together they'd rebuilt not just the business, but their entire approach to partnership. The anniversary special also announced the establishment of the Truth in Families Initiative, a nationwide program funded by Family Feud and the Steve Harvey Foundation. The program provided resources for families dealing with various forms of protective deception, the lies we tell to shield our loved ones from pain, but that ultimately cause more harm than the truth ever could. As the special concluded, Steve Harvey made a point that resonated with millions. Samantha and Michael Jenkins didn't just answer a Family Feud question. They answered a question we all face. Do we love each other enough to be honest? Do we trust each other enough to be vulnerable? Their answer was yes, eventually, and that eventually saved everything. Today, Samantha and Michael Jenkins continue their advocacy work. They've helped establish support groups in all 50 states. They regularly speak at corporate events, encouraging companies to address the human cost of layoffs. They've testified before Congress about the need for support in unemployment services, but most importantly, they continue to share their story, reminding people that shame thrives in darkness but dies in light. Their marriage, tested by deception and strengthened by truth, has become a testament to the power of honesty. They still have their weekly honesty dinners. They still hold hands when things get tough, and neither of them pretends anymore about anything. Michael kept the lunchbox he carried during those 7 months of pretending. It sits in their home office, a reminder of where they've been and how far they've come. Sometimes, when he speaks to groups of unemployed workers, he brings it with him. This lunchbox, he tells them, carried sandwiches to a job that didn't exist. But more than that, it carried my shame, my fear, and my isolation. The day I stopped carrying it was the day I started carrying hope instead. The impact of their story continues to ripple outward. Marriage counselors report that the Jenkins clip is one of the most powerful tools for helping couples understand the danger of protective deception. Employment centers use it to address the psychological aspects of job loss. Families watch it together as a conversation starter about honesty and vulnerability. 5 years after that fateful Family Feud episode, a study was published showing that couples who watched the Jenkins episode were 40% more likely to address hidden problems in their relationships. The researchers called it the most impactful non-therapeutic intervention they'd studied. Samantha and Michael had become accidental therapists to millions simply by being brave enough to stop pretending. In his final reflection on the moment that changed everything, Steve Harvey said, "I've hosted thousands of episodes of Family Feud. I've heard every possible answer to every possible question. But when Samantha Jenkins said her husband had been pretending to have a job, she didn't just give an answer. She started a conversation that America needed to have about shame, about pride, about the lies we tell to protect ourselves and others, and about the freedom that comes when we finally stop pretending." The Jenkins family's story proves that sometimes the most powerful moments happen when we least expect them. A game show question became a catalyst for change. A moment of unplanned honesty became a movement of authentic living. A couple's private struggle became a public inspiration. And 2 people who thought they were protecting each other by lying discovered that the only protection they really needed was the truth. If you're reading this and you're pretending about anything to anyone, remember Samantha and Michael Jenkins. Remember that love is stronger than shame. Remember that truth, however painful, creates possibilities that lies never could. Remember that the people who love you would rather have your honest struggles than your dishonest success. And remember that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stop pretending and start living authentically. Even when your voice shakes, even when you're terrified, even when you think the truth will destroy everything. Because as the Jenkins family proved, sometimes the truth doesn't destroy. Sometimes it rebuilds everything, stronger and better than before.